Hello everyone and welcome back to another election watch analysis video. Today I'll be going over a hypothetical 2024 presidential election scenario between Sherrod Brown and Ron DeSantis. So in this video, I'll first briefly go over the candidates, then go through the states by margin as I usually do. So Sherrod Brown, in a recent video I named him, in my opinion, the best Democratic candidate for 2024, and that was because he's essentially an electoral juggernaut. That's the best way I can describe him. He has very high appeal to suburban voters, minority voters, and blue-collar voters, which is a demographic the Democrats have lost in recent elections. So he is a senator from the state of Ohio, where he has won re-election by very large margins, and essentially every single time he's ran for the U.S. Senate, he has won by over 5%, which is a very big accomplishment. Even in 2018, right after Donald Trump won the state by 8%, he won by about 6%. So Ron DeSantis is another very well talked about possible candidate for 2024. He is the current governor of Florida, who gained a lot of attention in the media recently, and frankly, I think he's a pretty good candidate. He has a lot of higher name recognition now. He's very popular in his home state, which is a swing state, and he has decent strength among both Donald Trump supporters and suburban voters. And while the suburban voters idea has been tossed around a lot, and I'm not quite entirely sure he will sustain that support he got in the 2018 Florida governor's race, which he did win the demographic, but he may not sustain that in the 2022 Florida gubernatorial election, but we'll have to see. So as of now, I'll be basing off the idea that Ron DeSantis has good support among the suburbs. So anyway, let's get into the safe states, and I usually do it by home state, but since both these candidates are from swing states, I'm just going to start off with the safe Sherrod Brown states. California, Oregon, and Washington will all be safe, along with most of the East Coast as usual, including New Jersey, New York, and Maine's 1st district will be safe. Illinois will be safe, along with Colorado, and New Mexico could be debated, but I think I put that as likely. Virginia, I will also put as safe, and that rounds out the safe states. And for sure, Ron DeSantis, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and of course the Dakotas will all be safe. Most Nebraska, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and of course many of the southern states. So I would consider putting Missouri as likely, and same with Kansas. But I think that in the end, Ron DeSantis could do very well with the voters there and make them both around decent margins. Donald Trump only won them by around 15% each, so against a pretty bad candidate with real population and blue-collar voters, Sherrod Brown can make them likely, but in the end, I think that they'll be safe. So that will actually not round out the safe states. I think South Carolina will actually be safe. Ron DeSantis has a decent regional appeal there, and he would do well enough with suburban voters and I was going to say minorities, but I don't think Ron DeSantis has enough. He does not have support among black voters, which Sherrod Brown does. His main minority support is in Latino and Hispanic groups. So anyway, back to South Carolina. I think he'd win it by a safe margin, even though Donald Trump won it by a likely margin, since he would do very well with the suburban voters there, better than Donald Trump did. So now let's head into the likely states, and Indiana will also be safe. So likely states include, of course, Sherrod Brown, New Mexico, which is for the Democrats. Ron DeSantis could definitely improve with Hispanic voters here, and I think that he will do very well in the southern areas of the state, which would lead Sherrod Brown to win it by 10 or 11%, so no small margin, of course. Maine at large will be likely. This will be because of Maine's 2nd district, which I'll fill in soon, but just a little spoiler alert, I think Sherrod Brown will do very well there. Of course, he will narrow up the margin, but not win it completely, and those extra votes will, of course, go to the grand total, which would make him win Maine at large by a decent margin. And other likely states will include Minnesota, and that will be all for the likely states. For Ron DeSantis, Alaska will be likely. It's a state that I think that Ron DeSantis really couldn't change which way it is trending. So that will be it for the likely states for Ron DeSantis, actually. Sorry to go back on that. Texas will be likely. And the reason why it will be likely is because Ron DeSantis could definitely improve with the Hispanic voters that are trending to the right and voting for Republicans, while Sherrod Brown would definitely do decently in the Rio Grande Valley. As we saw with the recent race in House race in Texas, they're actually, I'm sorry, not the recent House race in Texas, just recent races in Texas, Latino voters are definitely not a monolith, and they are not voting for Democrats as much as they were before. So Ron DeSantis would do well enough with them to win Texas by around 5%. So now going into the lean states. So lean states will include, in this for Sherrod Brown, of course, Nebraska's second. I think Ron DeSantis could do well there since it is a very suburban area. But Sherrod Brown would win over the blue-collar voters and do well enough to make it closer than it would be closer than it was in 2020. He'd do well enough there to win it. I believe that New Hampshire will be likely. Michigan will be, lean. Michigan will be lean. Sherrod Brown would have a very strong base of support there with the Biden voters and the blue-collar voters, so his coalition would give him a victory by around 3%. And I'd consider putting Nevada lean, because even though Ron DeSantis has pretty strong Hispanic support, Biden won it by about 2.5%. To be exact, I believe it was 2.4%. And Sherrod Brown would hold on to many of those voters. So definitely it would be around 2%, so Ron DeSantis would make gains, but he would not win it outright. And I believe that the last lean state, I'm really debating on Pennsylvania. If Sherrod Brown could do well enough with the populist voters there and in the cities to win it by a lean margin, I think that he will, and he'll expand on Joe Biden's margin. While suburbs would shift to the right, the blue-collar voters would shift to the left, so the areas around Pittsburgh, for example, would shift to the left, and Sherrod Brown would win by a little over 1.5%. So this gives Sherrod Brown 264 electoral votes, while Ron DeSantis is at 265. So the lean states for Ron DeSantis will include Florida, his home state, where he is pretty popular, Maine's 2nd District, which I went over earlier, and that will be all for lean states. So now we get into the very close states. So I'm going to just go right into it. I think Wisconsin will be lean for Sherrod Brown. He would definitely do well in the driftless regions, which is the southwestern area of the state, which is very blue-collar. Joe Biden lost, but he still won essentially based on massive turnout from the cities. And Sherrod Brown would get that, but he'd also get the driftless regions. He wouldn't win them outright, since Ron DeSantis would do very well there, since he is a very, he's still a populist candidate. I'm just to quickly say that both these candidates are populists. They would do very well. Both of them, of course, would gain voters in Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. So it will be very close races, but they'll still be very competitive. So Wisconsin, Sherrod Brown would win it narrowly, or maybe by under 1%, which is, of course, nothing bad, which is definitely nothing to sneeze at for Ron DeSantis. That is a good margin against someone who is has very good appeal to blue-collar voters. And I believe that Ohio will be tilted for Sherrod Brown, and the reason for this is that he is just very popular in the state. He would win. He would definitely keep most of the voters from his 2018 win, and he won by 6%. So Ron DeSantis would definitely improve a lot, but I still think that Sherrod Brown would win. And I believe that Georgia will be tilt for Sherrod Brown. He would do well in the Atlanta metro area, decently in the suburbs, and that would give him a win in the state. And now for Ron DeSantis, I believe that he would make North Carolina tilt. He would maybe do around the same margin as Donald Trump in 2020, which was about 1.3%. And the reason for this is that the suburbs in North Carolina aren't shifting as fast as, say, the suburbs in Georgia. So Ron DeSantis would hold most of them. And I believe that Sherrod Brown would definitely get a lot of the Roy Cooper voters, those blue-collar voters that went for Roy Cooper but not for Joe Biden. He'd do well there. He'd do well in the cities. So I think that he'd actually narrow it up a little bit more than in 2020. But in the end, he'd still lose the state. And then Arizona and Iowa are the two states left. And I think Arizona, Ron DeSantis would have a great chance there. It isn't shifting to the left as reliably as Arizona. For example, the Latino voters there, I believe, aren't shifting to the right like some of the voters in Texas. But the suburbs, of course, there are not very liberal compared to, again, I've been comparing the suburbs to Georgia. There are suburbs there that voted about 20% for Joe Biden. But in Arizona, it was definitely far closer. So I think that in the end, Ron DeSantis could definitely win it. But Sherrod Brown definitely have a chance. So I'm really deliberating on this one. But in the end, I think that Sherrod Brown would actually win it. And this is because he would do very well in the Phoenix area. He'd do decently in the suburbs, and it'd be insanely close, probably one of the closer states in this election. So Joe Biden won by 0.3%. I think it'd be maybe around that margin, maybe a little less. And then the final state left is Iowa. So Iowa, of course, was actually a very pretty ironclad, likely Democratic state for Barack Obama, and it was a essentially Democratic-leaning swing state for a very long time. But Donald Trump won many of the blue-collar voters there and shifted the state to the right. Now Republicans hold a 100,000 voter advantage in registration alone, and it is definitely shifted to the right a lot, and Democrats don't have much hospitable territory there. They lost the 2 of the 3 congressional districts they held there in 2020. So I think Ron DeSantis could definitely do very well there, but Sherrod Brown would as well. But I think I give it to Ron DeSantis by a tilt margin, and here is why. Sherrod Brown would make it close. He'd narrow it down to under 1%. And that, of course, is no small feat. In 2020, it was 8.1%. So narrowing it up would be a very, very, of course, a major feat by Sherrod Brown. But, of course, that voter registration advantage I brought up earlier would come into play in the shift to the right by voters again. Ron DeSantis is a populist, and while he'd lose other states in the area, he would still win Iowa. So that's it. Of course, Sherrod Brown will become the next president in this scenario, 319 to Ron DeSantis' 219. While it is a pretty large margin, it would actually be pretty close. So before you go to the comments and call me biased, yeah, this would come down to a few states. Actually, pretty similar to 2020 would come down to a few states in the tilt margin. So there we have it. Of course, Sherrod Brown wins. Ron DeSantis comes close. And gains made would be Sherrod Brown winning Ohio, making gains with the blue-collar voters, as you can see. Of course, Ron DeSantis would make gains with Latino voters, though he would lose ground in places like Maine's 2nd and Iowa, though he would make gains in Nebraska's 2nd. So yeah, so that's the end of this video, everyone. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you want to watch more content. Ring the bell so you can get instantly notified every time my video comes out. I have some few exciting projects coming up. Another video with Sherrod Brown in it, and more election predictions, as well as a new analysis video. So that, again, should be coming out soon. Hit the bell. Leave a comment about what your prediction would be. I think this was actually a pretty hard prediction for me to make. Ron DeSantis is a great candidate, and Sherrod Brown is as well. So yeah, tell me your prediction. Leave me any video suggestions and feedback in the comments down below. Join the Discord in the server, in the description down below. I also have a mock government I'm a part of in there, I believe. So join that as well. It's pretty fun to be on there. So that's it, everyone. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.